Hey, travel biz owner. Welcome to the summer selling series on the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur podcast. Let's gear up for a summer of sales and learn from top industry experts how to demystify some of your favorite or most intriguing destinations or products. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast and welcome to our summer selling series. So, if you're brand new to the podcast, you may have noticed that last year I put on a summer selling series. So, we had a series of episodes that helped you sell more of a certain destination or more of an experience, travel type of experience. And so this episode, we're going to be focusing a lot more on Switzerland and how you can sell more of Switzerland. I was just telling Grace, our guest today, that I've been to Switzerland for a day. So my knowledge is very limited, but that was an amazing day that I did spend in Switzerland. But she is the expert here because she also actually lives in Switzerland. So we're going to dive into all of the things, whether or not you have been interested in selling this destination. I hope this piques your interest in at least knowing who to refer off your clients to in the case that they are very interested in trying out Switzerland as a destination. So without further ado, welcome Grace to the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you, Rita. I'm so excited to be here. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, I remember we had first met as part of my work with host agency reviews, and I just thought it was so fascinating. One that you had I think you had recently moved to overseas and we're starting this travel business and focusing on the area. So I'm like this is kind of like almost like a full circle moment because I know I've it's been top of mind for quite some time. But can you let everybody know kind of how you got into the travel industry, even like what was your what kind of like motivated you and your family to move overseas and how did you land on Switzerland?
Yeah, sure. So I might have actually might have when we talked about the time I was in Switzerland, I've actually been here 10 years, but I think when I was in
Mhm.
the course with you and all that, I might have actually been traveling. And so I have a feeling I probably made reference to
Okay.
that and was just coming on. But yes, I was just new to all about travel back then
Uh-huh.
when I was in the hard course. But yeah, so we moved here. I moved here with my husband and our then toddler 10 years ago, and we were supposed to come on an assignment. We actually came for my husband's job.
Ah.
Um, and we actually had, I was doing work as a product manager in Silicon Valley. So it's like a tech, working with tech products in a completely different industry.
Uh-huh.
And when we moved here, then we had to do some adjustments once we decided we were going to obviously stay. And then we decided to expand the family. So we do have now two kids, and my husband's still working for the same company, but after a number of years doing the some of the work that I was involved with in product management, I decided I just gave into the bug to start my own thing. And so with the family support, I decided to start in the travel industry. I'd
Nice.
always wanted to start something, and then in terms of in what, I think that was the part that I had to do some soul searching and just realizing we do a lot of travel when we're here.
Mhm.
My I mean, Switzerland's kind of a small country, so you also can easily travel
Yeah.
out of Switzerland as well as, and inside is also wonderful for visiting. And then my husband's from Turkey, so we do visit the grandparents and the family every year. And
Nice.
and my parents obviously live in the US right now. So we do a lot of traveling as a family. And I think a combination of us just always traveling and then also now us living here, we've been getting a lot of questions about either tips and how to handle it with the baby to a toddler to primary school children. It goes on in the multi-generational. with the grandparents, traveling with the grandkids. And
Hmm.
so it just was a very natural segue, I think, for me. I felt like I love answering these questions. I love trying to provide unsolicited or solicited advice. And then I thought this would be really wonderful to do something in travel and then work with families actually. So, and that is actually my specialty is working with families and multi-generational. I also do work with now a fair number of seniors and recently retired
Hmm.
folks as well. So it's been really nice and focusing on Europe, of course. But that's how it all started. And I started about 2 years ago,
Okay,
and it's been a really amazing and interesting and ride. Because I was new to travel, I think it was also just having to learn from the ground up on everything. But thank goodness
right.
for yours and Har's course and guidance and everything.
Yay. Awesome. So, and would you say that you focus more on selling trips to Switzerland above like other European countries, or is it a little bit of a mix?
I would say that it's probably almost half and half in the sense of Switzerland versus other European countries
Hmm.
in that sense. So I do a fair number of other. Italy is one. I think what it is people come to visit Switzerland and they're either here for that trip or
Uh-huh.
they're like, I need to do Switzerland plus another country. And that another
Okay.
country oftentimes is Italy, but it can be France. It can be, just a combination of things. And so in that sense, but I would say probably half is Switzerland, the other half is other countries.
Okay. What what is kind of like for you the standout thing about Switzerland when we're thinking about all the other European countries? Because I don't feel like Switzerland's like at the top. Like I feel like Italy, Greece, France, maybe Germany, the UK is kind of like when people think about it. But Switzerland, I feel like is its own little hidden gem there.
Yes, I don't remember where I read it. If you had to look at where someone's visiting Europe for the first time from maybe the US, then oftentimes Italy and probably Paris would be, some of the destinations. Maybe in Italy it's Florence, Venice, in that case, and Rome. And
Mhm.
so it'd be like those cities would be the first time, or London, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like second time around, then it's going to be, name the city. So Switzerland is oftentimes not the first time when they come to Europe. What's really interesting is that for my clients, oftentimes I am working with first time families visiting Europe for the first time.
Hmm.
And sometimes they are actually people who visited before they had kids, but this is the first time with the kids. So in that sense, it's actually quite unexpected that I am working with people where it is a first time visiting Europe in general, and they're
Uh-huh.
coming to Switzerland. But I would say that when people come, oftentimes and based on the type of activities they're going to do, it's very nature based.
Okay.
You're going to do a lot of hiking, but hiking in the non-traditional Swiss sense. You don't need to change your shoes and you need to change your clothes to hiking gear and you need to
Yeah.
go on at least a 3 hour hike with this this grade of hill. It's just one of those where you go on a 1 to however many hours hike. You're oftentimes taking many different cable car, gondola,
Mm.
we call them mountain trains in general, somewhere here and there. It's a lot of public transportation riding, but it's just a different um, pace, I think is the
Okay.
word for it. Yeah, it's a little bit of a different pace. You're not trying to make a ticket entry into this museum for this time and this one for that time. And, we don't have like the Colosseum and the Vatican, and all those where there's such wonderful institutions that you need to go see.
Hmm.
Here, it's a very different type of sightseeing.
Okay. Because that it seems just very more laid back. It almost seems like instead of it's kind of like you're getting back to yourself, like almost like a rejuvenating trip, but in a different way. Like I'm not thinking like spa, but you're going back to nature to almost get back to yourself.
That's a great way of putting it. I think, and there are actually spas here,
Uh-huh.
but in the sense of like thermal spas and things. But exactly, and I would love to actually work on a lot of those types of trips as well. It's almost like an unplugging
Yes,
trip.
yeah.
I think sometimes when you're coming for the first time and with kids, that probably you're not going for unplugging at that first trip
Uh-huh.
standpoint, but I think sometimes there are people that do come back later and they do a multi-day hiking trip, for example, or
Okay.
they might do a certain type of trip. Maybe you've already seen a lot of the highlights and you've already seen the tops of certain mountains that are very popular, and then now it's more like let's just enjoy nature and we're gonna just do walking, and some hikes are actually without digital devices,
Yeah.
and those, but for the most part, though, or you just don't use it as much, it's one of those. But there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I like to think of it as a time to just get a little bit of a unplugging
Mhm.
time, and the scenery is so beautiful. I think that's the other part where
Yeah.
it takes your breath away and you're just like, I just need to stop and look.
Yeah.
And and I think for some people maybe if they like camping, a way to look at it is sometimes you go on a 2 or 3 day camping trip and you go there, yeah, you have access to your phone, but you're not on it all the time, and it's just a quick check. And by the time you come back, it's like, oh wow, I had a chance to disconnect a little bit because the roads
Yeah.
noises and the everything's just a little bit lighter, right? That's kind of how it's like, I think, when you go on a trek over here.
Yeah. Yeah, no, because it's making me think of I had gone on a Rhine River cruise. The river cruise ended in Basel, but we had hired a driver to take us into Zurich for the day. We had a hotel for the night, saw the beautiful lake that's there. And it was almost like the perfect way to kind of like decompress from like such a busy, intense, like lots of things happening within the river cruise experience. And so that's kind of how I would see almost a trip being like instead of going to check off things, it's kind of being able to like what does this other part of the world, what can they offer in terms of nature and being grounded back again? And it's not like a hustle bustle type of trip, it sounds what Switzerland is. It's more like similar things that we could probably experience when we're back at home, but just in a different setting, which I think like that in itself is an amazing type of trip to have, is this like coming back to yourself and trying out different routes across the world.
Yes, yes, exactly. I mean, of course, someone can choose to be go, go, go across
Uh-huh.
Switzerland. You can certainly do that.
Uh-huh.
But I think even when they want to, they can still go, for example, up to maybe it's a checklist of mountain peaks they need to get to, but they can still go up to one and do a hike
Yeah,
up there, and even just a couple hours hike. Right. I think when you're just out in nature and you're just out there, it's already enough to just you're getting your mind just out of the usual day-to-day grind. And I think
exactly.
that's the beautiful part of it.
Yeah, what would you say are some of the most popular hikes, whether that's like peaks or just like different nature trails or things like that, that a lot of visitors to Switzerland love to take in? This summer selling series is brought to you by the Cruise Content Library. Finding stock vertical videos for your social media marketing is not easy. And I mean that good, juicy, quality content that paints a picture of the amazing cruise experiences and not just another drone footage of another ship. But I'm changing all that and putting my best content of over 1,000 vertical videos available to you inside the Cruise Content Library. Finally sell with video storytelling on your social media channels. Visit the link in the show description to save your spot.
Well, I think that for many people, maybe because of Instagram and a lot of the beautiful pictures, they do end up going over to the the mountain area. And so that's actually
Uh-huh.
the Jungfrau region. So I
Okay.
think that probably does end up being quite popular and rightfully so because it is beautiful.
Hmm.
I think a lot of people do head up to, for example, Grunewald, and if you go up to Grunewald, First up there at the top, there's also some beautiful hikes from there. A lot of people will go to Lauterbrunnen Valley, and there's some nice really easy hikes across the valley. And then you can go up the cable cars up to the mountain-free towns like Murin or Wengen. And from these, you have cable cars that take you further up the mountain, and you can do so many different types of hikes. And it can be, and these hikes all range from either stroller friendly to, maybe you do need some hiking gear and proper shoes, but it ranges. So like that's just an example. But there's also I get from Lucerne, people like to go to Mount Pilatus. There's a few different mountains, but that one's a popular one and it has dramatic views up top. And there's also some hikes. Some people even hike up. So you don't even have to take the cable car. I think it just depends on your interest level.
Uh-huh.
I would say that the Jungfrau region ends up being certainly very popular because it has so many of the dramatic views and things, but
Mm.
the French side is also beautiful with Montreux, for example, and the eastern side over with the St. Moritz area also, and then of course south in Lugano. They all have wonderful areas to visit as
Mhm.
well. So there's a lot to choose from. If
Yeah.
people are interested, you're also welcome to reach out to me and I can give you a few pointers. And we have some really wonderful sites between Swiss Tourism Board and also just people in the travel industry that write up about the experience. And so
Hmm.
you can see maybe what makes sense for your client would
Yeah.
be, I'm happy to help.
Oh, perfect. I know that you mentioned like a couple different points, and I know that Switzerland is a smaller country. So like what's transportation like getting to one point? Is it pretty far? Like how close in proximity? And like, is this a good destination for people who want to be pretty independent? Like they don't want to do tour groups, they'd rather drive themselves around.
Oh yeah, so super easy to get around. I think when it comes to transportation, I probably two biggest questions I get are should I drive or should I take public transportation?
Uh-huh.
And I can say it's both, but I think if you're looking at it for your client's perspective, it's probably more just about their needs, to be honest,
Okay.
and probably just like how it is for maybe like some other destinations as well. But the public transportation system here is wonderful. If you already are familiar with public transportation, it's great. If you're not familiar with it, this is a wonderful place to start
Okay.
and getting to know it. And that's partly because things generally run on time. It's very well, the signs are good. You can easily buy your tickets or there are train passes too. And there's a lot of it's very straightforward to get yourself from place to place.
Okay.
I think when you're renting a car, the roads are in great condition. The, I mean, the signage will obviously be in whatever the language of whatever region you're in, but pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
It's not like we have a lot of different freeways.
Yeah.
So the freeways are more about like, direction towards Geneva, for example.
Yeah.
So I think when you have that, and then, for example, if people want to come for like ski trips, I get asked about snow chains a lot, for example. If you're, for the most part, most of the roads are all cleared up pretty quickly. And if you do end up, for some reason, needing it, there will be a sign that says you need to have snow chains. But otherwise,
Okay.
and I can tell you for the amount of, I mean, we're not exactly expert skiers, but we do go skiing every winter. And I think for the times that I've had to go to the ski resort, knock on wood, we've not even had to use it. So I think it just depends, of
Uh-huh.
course. Sometimes I'm sure there's other places where obviously you would need snow chains, but
Uh-huh.
I'm just trying to say that most of the roads are all really well cleared.
Okay.
And then to buy the tickets is also pretty straightforward. I also even have if people want to see on my website, there's even an article called like how to buy train tickets, I think, on the
Oh.
SBB app. SBB is the Swiss Transportation um, system, and also they have an app that's really great.
Uh-huh.
And you also can use Google Maps to take a look at taking, the train or and driving, obviously. Google Maps works great here, and so you can take a look at how it would look to take the train to the next, say, what route do you want to take? Driving wise, same thing. And that in general, it's a small country. I think you can get to the French side in about 3 hours. So that's why
Oh,
it's kind of a joke. You can drive to like Basel area and have breakfast in Basel and like in Switzerland, have
uh-huh.
lunch in Germany, finish up with dinner in France,
That's
because
funny.
it's just we're all so close to so many borders.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate too because you mentioned different languages because I think that's one of the things that like the one day that I was in Switzerland I had noticed because there's four I think like major languages that are spoken within the country and I think it depends on which region you're at, which language that you're gonna hear, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So most of the country actually is German speaking,
Okay.
and then a small percentage is French, and then a much smaller percentage is Italian, and then there's a really, really, really small amount of Romansh, which is the fourth one.
Oh,
The German speaking ones, for the most part, like Zurich, Lucerne, well, they're all in German,
okay.
but the I would say that there are some that are like mm, Bern, the capital, for
Uh-huh.
example, is French and German.
Okay.
So there's a few there it's dual, but the primary one, but in Zurich, for example, the primary is German, but you'll see all the instructions and things on the box will always have three languages on it.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I think in the other cantons it doesn't quite make all the languages visible.
Okay. And I know that we're talking a lot about the lots of nature and like the restorative things that you can do. But for those who might be interested in like some of the big sites, what would you say are some of the biggest sites or like the most well-renowned sites within Switzerland? And then I also want to talk, I was like, I can't not talk about like the food because there are certain things that are inherently Swiss.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think in terms of sites, actually, the big ones are those mountains.
Okay.
I named a few of them, but there's definitely others. There's also a destination, for example, like Jungfraujoch, which is like the highest cable car station in Europe or something of that nature. But it's it's um it's all for the most part related to our mountains.
Okay.
There are, of course, things like Lindt Chocolate Factory. There's many
Yeah.
other chocolate factories. That one's probably the most easily accessible
Mhm.
from the town. But I've been to many others, so I
Yeah.
can tell people if they want some other tips. Um, so there's, certainly that there's cheese,
Yeah.
and for example, Gruyere, the town, is also has a cheese museum, and you can see the cheese there. But I would say a lot of the top hits, if you would say, that and things that are most famous for are going to the mountains, and then
Okay.
of course the lakes. We do have
Yes.
a lot of lakes in Switzerland, like Zurich, Lucerne, like Geneva. There's many others, but they're all. It's also really, really wonderful, and frankly, taking a boat ride on them is just part of the public transportation
Hmm.
ticket. So you don't have to do anything special. You can, of course, still engage in like a private boat ride too, and things. But if you want to do just like a public boat ride, also in Interlaken, there's two lakes that are also really popular, and some of them are in movies. So there's just a lot of water and mountain.
Yes.
And then we have cheese and chocolate, cheese
Yes.
chocolate watches all scattered throughout.
Yes, because I know like fondue, then there's also like raclette that's like a big thing. And I don't, did I say that correctly? Raclette?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, we didn't partake in that, but I'm like, I have to come back and and
I
do
was
some
like,
of the
you were
cheese.
here one day and you knew
Yeah.
you knew you knew quite a lot of the food. Yes, the for the Swiss, like in the winter, raclette is so I love raclette, and
Okay.
it's for the people who don't know. So fondue is it's something that I think most people are familiar with, the melted pot of cheese.
Yeah.
In Switzerland, I will say they put a fair amount of alcohol in it.
Oh, wow.
So it's either good or bad.
depending how you like it.
Uh-huh.
I don't think it's very strong from a, feeling standpoint. It's more like the taste. It's you can
Okay.
you can taste it. So I find that the children here actually don't like the fondue as much, and they like raclette more. And
Interesting.
raclette is basically, it's just melted cheese.
Yeah.
So we have raclette grills at home, and then you just have a little tray, and then you just put the slice of cheese on it,
Uh-huh.
grill it, and then you add like you can grill like bell peppers or mushrooms or even some meat or potatoes, and then you just put the melted cheese on top of it. And
Yeah.
so in that sense, it's like you're putting the melted cheese on top as opposed to fondue where you're dipping the food into the fondue pot.
Hmm.
And traditionally here the fondue is more just bread and potatoes. So it
Okay.
was funny because the first time we came, we were like expecting a lot more things than the meat, and it was just like bread and potatoes.
Yeah.
But I think those are really popular. They're obviously the sausages like the bratwursts
Oh
are
yeah.
very popular as well. And then we have roasty, and it's like hash browns. So that one
Okay.
is quite delicious.
Nice. Uh,
Yeah, and then
I
yeah.
was like, I just had lunch, but now I'm like salivating all over again.
I was just thinking like, is it dinner time?
Yeah. I
Hmm.
did want to get into a little bit of like the lodging too, because we're talking about like all these amazing like outdoor spaces. And I feel like maybe hotel lodging might be like you might be missing out. So is like are there lodges or B&Bs or like what? Like if you're wanting to do some of these hikes and things like that, where would somebody be staying at?
Yeah, so there's definitely the hotels that are
Okay.
certainly very good option.
Okay.
And then it'll go the range. So it go, there's and you'll have the usual 5-star choices all the way down to, um, very basic but clean ones. And then you also have apartments.
Okay.
And then of course, and there are B&Bs and a lot of other private apartments, professionally managed apartments. It goes the gamut. I will come back to some of those because I want to make a couple comments on it. And
Yeah.
then there's also more like in the mountains. I would say probably these are more either locals do it or people who are, really just into hiking. There's like hut to hut. I'll say a little slower. Hut to hut
Uh-huh.
hiking. So you're going from, one part of the mountain and you walk and trek, go on your trek. And then your next stop is the next hut, for
Okay.
example. And so you do need to probably plan out where you're going, but generally you can also do that. They're also pretty basic. And so from that standpoint, those are also possible. I think if they come with families, then usually people stay in hotels or apartments. And I would say the one thing, and it's probably around setting expectations that I try to do is so Switzerland does tend to be a little bit pricier.
Okay.
And so I think the earlier you can get accommodations, the better. That's definitely one thing you want to do is early. The Swiss in general like to have things early. You go to a restaurant, if you can make reservations, do it. It's
Uh-huh.
it's just always more pleasant all around for everyone. Even if you're the only people there. But they'll totally adapt, but it's just more, So um if you have the lost my train of thought. Sorry. So we have the hotels, you book early, and the main thing also is because the number of rooms that can accommodate more than 2 adults is also not as there's just not as many rooms because
Okay.
the properties are all smaller. They're either smaller, sometimes they're older. And so I think from that standpoint, if you want your choice of rooms that can actually accommodate more than 2 people, maybe even a family of 4, for example,
Okay.
then the earlier, the better chance.
That's great to know.
Otherwise, you end up having to move up to, I don't know, a suite or something, and obviously it's going to be just that much more expensive.
Right.
And and then there's hotels where they're more popular because they're great location, so they may just get booked up, faster. And then the other part is, if you so we have older properties. Some of them are really, really well kept. well maintained.
Hmm.
But a lot of them, because they're older, actually don't have air conditioning.
Okay.
So it's also one of those where I won't say that hotels with air conditioning get booked out first. That's not the case. But maybe it's, in a great location with the rooms that are bigger with air conditioning, perhaps.
Yeah.
In the mountains, it's much more common to have hotels, even the 4 star, that don't have air conditioning. And I know some five
Okay.
stars that don't eat also. So that's just to keep in mind, because usually in the mountains, it's cooler. I Having said that, this past couple of weeks has been really crazy in Central Europe,
Uh-huh.
and we're just having this crazy heat wave.
Yeah.
So it happens, and it is what it is, and they have fans now. But I think it's just one of those, setting expectations that this is how it is if you travel. And just to give a, point of view, in the homes, like in our, like where I live now, but in most of all the homes, only 10%, I think is the number, have air conditioning. You can get a portable one probably, but for the most part, we open the windows in the early morning or at night. And
Mhm.
so this is how we live.
Yeah.
But I also know I lived in the US in certain cities that didn't have air conditioning in their apartments either. So
Okay.
I think there's probably people that could be used to it too. But just a heads up, and to realize that some of these will be without air conditioning, but you're still at a pretty nice property.
Yeah.
And then the other one is sometimes you'll find that 4 star, 3 star hotels may be at 4 star prices somewhere else. So I think of it as almost like your
Okay.
prices that you're paying are like one notch more.
Uh-huh.
Um, I say that with a caveat that I do believe Italy has gotten quite expensive this
Yeah.
summer. So I'm not sure actually if that little my little mantra is the as accurate anymore, but
Uh-huh.
maybe compared to some other European cities, I can say generally we are more expensive, by a little bit of a factor.
Yeah. Thinking about that too, to get a little bit tactical, are you like when you book trips for your clients, are you kind of doing this direct with property? Are there certain like DMCs that you might be utilizing, or are there certain like tour operators that you utilize more for your Switzerland bookings?
So for Switzerland, I probably tend to use a combination, just depending on availability
Okay.
and the pricing. It's either usually TBO, Rate Hawk,
Uh-huh.
and sometimes Expedia Tap.
Okay.
So, and then sometimes, and I do check against direct. So I do take a look at the direct bookings, just their direct booking site to see how it is,
Hmm.
and just judge what makes the best sense for them. There's pros and cons for actually using um one or the other.
Hmm.
So that's why I kind of take a look at how it is. But I think for this most part, I find that in terms of inventory, Tap probably has the most amount inventory,
Okay.
in that sense. But there's also some advantages with, like, for example, TBO and Rate Hawk, you can hold it,
Hmm.
because sometimes they just need a little bit of time and you just want to grab it, and that way you can hold it and then pay when
Okay.
they send you the credit card. And so that's really, really useful.
Okay.
And also the ability to put the um, multiple bookings in a cart, so you can actually just run the credit card once, for
Nice.
example.
Yeah.
So that's another reason, just so I'm not like running 10 cards or something. I mean, I'm not having them save that many hotels, but just, multiple transactions.
Hmm.
And then, but I think a lot of times though, I end up going to Tap because of the inventory, and they have a bigger spread, and then also they have some VRBO properties as well.
Okay.
There are some mountain ones, that I have found where their booking site is literally the booking.com site.
Oh.
So it's just, some of these properties are just they're run on a little bit smaller scale. And so rather
Hmm.
than have their website be able to manage, a booking engine and stuff, they just direct you to their listing on booking.com.
Okay.
And I think maybe because booking is headquartered in Amsterdam, but it's very, very prevalently, very used very prevalently. Yeah. um, in Europe and stuff. So I do take a look at how it is
Hmm.
on Booking as well.
Okay.
But I try to use the other engines when I can.
Okay. Cool. Good to know. Before we jump off too, I wanted to, excuse me, I know you had mentioned that a lot of people will pair Switzerland with like a trip to France or a trip to Italy. So I guess, can you share like what would be the benefit of putting Switzerland first versus what's the benefit of putting Switzerland last when people are putting it in like a
Oh,
multi-destination itinerary?
oh, that's a great question. You know, I think I usually end up using whatever order makes sense for them from the airport standpoint. That's usually what ends up being the
Smart.
driving point. Zurich is it's a big airport, and so people, especially from the East Coast, but also some, I mean, other cities as well, can find a good flight schedule.
Hmm.
You know, the combination of price and schedule and everything to go. Sometimes it's to Zurich, sometimes in and out of Zurich direct.
Hmm.
Some people find it out of Milan, and so they may end up doing, for example, Switzerland first, and then they fly out of Milan to go back home.
Okay.
And so then they just want to do some Italy too. But yeah, I don't know if there's really an advantage either way in that sense. I think it's
Okay.
more about what works for their budget
Hmm.
and that. And then yeah, I think once I know how their schedule is, then we take a look at what makes sense in
Okay.
terms of their routing. And I've had people start with one and the other in both ways. And I think the only thing I would say is just that, and I don't think you can control this part when you're booking, is it's just because it's so weather dependent. You
Uh-huh.
know, it's great if you can go to the Switzerland part in a better weather, but you can't know that when you're when you're booking the ticket. So
Right, right. Yeah, well, Grace, thank you so much for being here and sharing a bit about Switzerland. I know that this has been like really insightful to kind of like just open eyes as to what a different destination it is compared to exactly what you were saying, some of the other European destinations. I know I'm gonna link your email address down below in the show notes in the show description. And then you also did a webinar that we're linking up. Can you just let us know a little bit about what this webinar is about?
oh, yes, I did a webinar where I recorded uh, just a lot of my tips and learnings from being here. So I think it's a tips and learnings in general of my 10 years of learning things the hard way. But also, I think from the standpoint of can it help someone who is about to go onto a discovery call where they don't even know anything about Switzerland, or
Right.
perhaps they do know some and this helps plug in the gaps. But it's basically just, it goes from, for example, passport validity, like because we're in the Schengen zone, going
Mhm.
into currency, we do not use a euro. And then to the what I mentioned about some of the public transportation versus car, and then a
Mhm.
few tips on how to help your clients know what they should do in terms of what types of transportation path. It's just more of like trying to help travel advisors educate their clients. But if they feel like it's great to help educate themselves too,
Yeah.
first, that's also great. But it's just basically a way to help them feel more comfortable and confident
Mhm.
in getting like a really quick 101 briefing on Switzerland that yeah so it's on a recording and then you can see on the slides some of the resources that I provide there and some of my favorite apps as
Okay.
well, especially for weather and transportation.
Oh, perfect. That's awesome. That's a really great resource, so I appreciate you sharing that. I'm also a little bummed we didn't talk about anything about expat life, so I feel like we might have to like do a future episode at some point about living and working overseas because I feel like that's a topic that's top of mind for many people, just in general because we're in the travel industry. And then just lots of things that are happening that might be motivating to just try something else out in life. So, yeah, we'll have to chat about that soon.
Yeah, I welcome if someone does have questions about that. You're welcome to also reach out to me on the email address that Rita will include in the show notes. So if there's anything about having either living overseas or expat life with family or something of that nature too, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Any last parting words or tips about Switzerland before we jump off?
I I think I just say don't be afraid to sell Switzerland. It may have some reputation of being expensive or a lot more about, going on your own as opposed to some activities where you can help them set up their whole schedule, but instead you
Mhm.
kind of need to trust your clients to be able to get onto the mountain train by themselves
Uh-huh.
and then go on the hike. It's all it's pretty straightforward. I think if you're going to do it in any country where you can help them get places, but then they go on their own and help try to do a little bit of some digital detox
Yeah.
or a little unplugging while still enjoying the beautiful scenery. I think don't be afraid, and I'm happy to help support in any way. If you need any questions, or if you have any questions or you need support, I'm happy to assist and provide some helpful tips on how to help make your clients' trip a wonderful success.
Awesome. Grace, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed our conversation about Switzerland today, and I know this is going to help some travel advisors sell Switzerland more. So thank you again.
Thanks so much. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for this opportunity, Rita.
You're so welcome, and thanks, Travel Pros, for listening in. We will see you on the next installment of this summer selling series next week, everybody. Bye. Thank you so much for joining me on the summer selling series. If you've got a travel biz friend that you think would benefit from this series, would you mind sharing this episode with them? All right, thank you again. I'll see you here next week.